Hello everyone, hope you guys are doing well. Today we are going to do a short recap video on what we've learned so far with Unit 4 to help prepare us to continue learning the rest of Unit 4 into Unit 5, which is solving quadratics. Okay, so we're going to be looking at some notes today from Unit 4. First, we're starting off with quadratics themselves. So quadratics, we said, are equations or expressions where the highest degree is 2. So we have an x squared somewhere in our equation. So this is different from our linear equations, for example, where we had just x to the first power. So x squared somewhere in the equation. And we said that the graph of quadratics is what we call a parabola, which, if you recall, we also said that was a U shape. So parabolas look something like a U shape, like that, or like that. Sometimes they face upside down. There's a few key features that we can identify for graphs of parabolas that help us describe them. So, for example, if we were to look at a coordinate plane and we had a graph of a parabola, like that, and like that. So not the best U, but still kind of like a U shape. Here we can describe a few key features of the graph. So first, we can take a look at the vertex. Which is just the highest or lowest point on our graph. So here our vertex is going to be at the bottom of the graph, lowest point, and our vertex is down here at 0, -4. So this is our vertex of our graph. We can also look at the x-intercepts. We're going to look a little bit more at x-intercepts later. We can have 0, 1, or 2 x-intercepts. And here we have 2 x-intercepts, and we can see that those are 2 and -2. We can finally look at the axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry is just the line that we have in the middle of our graph. So the vertical line running through the middle of our graph. It also runs through the vertex. So here our axis of symmetry is the line x equals 0. So the line right in the middle of our graph. So these are a few of the key features we can identify. One more is also the x-intercept, which we're always going to have 1 y-intercept, the y-intercept, which will always have 1. In this case, our y-intercept is also our vertex. So 0, -4, or -4. So those are a few key features of graphs of parabolas, which again are graphs of quadratics. We also talked about 3 different forms of quadratics. The first form we looked at was vertex form, which looks like y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. And here we're given a few key features. First, we're given the vertex, the highest or lowest point of the parabola, as h comma k. We're also told if our graph is flipped or not. So if a is positive, then it's facing up. If a is negative, it's facing down. A also tells us the stretch or compression. So is our graph going to look like wider or compression? A skinnier graph. H and K are the values of the vertex. They also tell us the horizontal and vertical shifts. So H is going to be the horizontal shift, keeping in mind that we have a minus H here. So if we had x minus 3, H would be a positive 3 shift. K is our vertical shift, up or down. So here are some key pieces of information that we can find from vertex form, our first form of equations, quadratic equations. Our second form is looking at factored form. Factored form can look like y equals we're going to have some a value in front. Sometimes it's just 1, so there's nothing in front. We're also going to have 2 different values inside b and c in this case. So a times x minus b times x minus c for factored form. Factored form gives us a few pieces of information. Again, a tells us the exact same information as we had before. So what we have up here, facing up, facing down, or a stretch or compression. So up slash down, and then looking kind of like at the shape of our graph. Our other 2 values, b and c, are the x-intercepts of our graph. So a really quick example was, or would be, if we had y equals x minus 2 times x minus 4. Here are 2 values, and again, we have minus b, minus c. Our 2 values are minus positive 2 and minus positive 4. 2 and 4 are the x-intercepts of our graph. So we know our graph would be x-intercept here, or an x-intercept at 2, and then x-intercept at 4. And then there's not a stretch or compression because we just have a coefficient of 1. So looking over here, we just have a coefficient of 1 in front. It's also facing up because 1 is positive. So our graph would end up looking like this. And again, we're looking at a parabola. So kind of like that. So factored form tells us the 2 x-intercepts and then also the stretch or compression, and if it's facing up or down. Finally, one note is that in factored form, our vertex is going to be in the middle or exactly in between our 2 intercepts. So our vertex is exactly in between our x-intercepts, which we can see on the graph to the right. So here our vertex is at 3, -1, and 3 is exactly in between 2 and 4. To find our vertex, we can just add the 2 values, b plus c, and divide by 2. We're finding an average between the 2 values. And that's our x value of the vertex. Once we have the x value, we can plug it into our equation to find the y value. So we're told the x-intercepts right away. We're also told some information about stretching or compression and up or down. And then finally, we can find the vertex exactly in between those 2 x-intercepts. Okay, finally, our last form that we started to learn about is standard form. Unfortunately, standard form is not super helpful with graphing quadratics, which is our current unit. Standard form looks like this. We have y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. We're not given a lot of information. Thankfully, a tells us the same exact information we saw above in our last 2 forms. So whether our graph is facing up or down, and then the shape, so a stretch or compression of our graph. C is also the y-intercept. So here we have C as our y-intercept. And we can see this because our y-intercept is when x is 0. So if we plug in 0, we get 0 here, and those terms become 0. So y equals c when x is 0. So those are the 2 pieces of information we have from standard form. At this point, so far, what we've looked at is in standard form, you can graph it by making a table and trying some points around, for example, the y-intercept. So that's how you can start to graph standard form. Finally, looking ahead, we are going to start to look at finishing up our graphing quadratics unit. That's going to involve looking at standard form and seeing if we can factor standard form. Because then if we factor standard form, suddenly we're given more information about our graph. We're told both of the x-intercepts, which makes our lives easier. So we don't have to worry as much about this table here. We're also going to be looking at, given a description, how can we write the equation? And also, how could we sketch a quick graph of the quadratic? So again, a quick recap, looking back at the top, we learned about what quadratics are, having an x squared somewhere. We know that the parabolas are U-shapes. We learned about a few key features of our graph, so the vertex, x-intercepts, axis of symmetry, y-intercept. We learned about our three forms, vertex form, and the information that those forms give us, factored form. And finally, standard form. So those are the main ideas that we've learned so far in this unit. Our next video is going to be starting to learn about some new information and topics to finish up Unit 4. All right, thank you guys, and let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to send me an email, and I'm looking forward to our next video.